The first thing we're going to talk about is the need to engage more wholly with the images that you make for yourself. And I talk about the full circle. I talk about the beginning, which is establishing the image, making the image. The second bit, which is seeing the image on your monitor, on your screen. And then the third is slamming into a brick wall. You slam into a brick wall. Your image does, so do you, because it doesn't go further. It doesn't go further. It's just awful. And when you, and you'd expect me to say this because of Fotospeed, who I've been with for many years, when you print, something happens, something enormous takes place. It's a full engagement with the image that you've made. Otherwise, it stops dead on your monitor. Fear and lack of confidence is the thing that stops people printing. And they can be overcome really quickly. So we must get through this stage of wanting to print and being frightened of doing it. And then you might answer to me, well, what am I going to do with it? Why do I do a 2016, what we used to call a 2016, or do you remember, 15, 12, or whatever it was? What am I going to do with it? Well, my idea is to exhibit. And you might think, well, exhibit? Where do I exhibit? But there are countless ways of sharing our photography, and we need to share our photography. And if I were to say to you, do you really want to be one of the 350 million every 24 hours who upload your images to Facebook? 350 million photographs, of which you are going to be one or two, uploaded to Facebook every 24 hours. 88 million yesterday, every 24 hours to Instagram. Is that where you want to be? Or would you rather be, by the way, I'm on Instagram, but we can go better. We can share our photography in print form using a charity. We can convert our images, which we spend a lot of time doing, into images that we can print, and we can put them onto a wall in an exhibition with a charity. Find a local charity. They will bring all their charity members to your exhibition. You will be able to produce images and sell them, and the charity members, supporters, will be more than happy to acquire some of the images because they're part of the charity. And they know that some of the images that you've got on the wall, by buying them, they're supporting the charity. We have to share our photography more effectively. So I've come up with this phrase. The print is the photograph's rightful inheritance. It is. Otherwise, it doesn't go full circle. And in a way, it's rather sad because all you end up doing is this, like a nervous tick. There you are. Oh no, sorry, it must be the other way. And the person is thinking, come on. Or it's on the monitor somewhere. There we are. It's on my little iPad. Oh no, that's lovely. And then they say, really interesting. The killer word. Really lovely. Great capture. Thank you for telling me that. That really helps me a lot to understand what my images, the effect it's had on you. Show them a print. They hold it. They feel it. They smell it. They engage with it. And that's what I have been doing probably for the last, dare I say, 30, 40 years of my life. So on to the image. What print? What image? How do we overcome the fear? The great Ansel Adams, recognition and pre-visualization blended together in one single moment of awareness. If we're going to devote all the time that we're going to devote to making our images, then we really do have to be able to work out what it is that we're going to share with a wider world. Lovely line, that. I really do like it. And the other one, which I'm very fond of, the Cartier-Bresson. To make photographs is to recognize simultaneously and in a fraction of a second both the fact itself and the rigorous organization of visually perceived forms that give it meaning. It's putting one's head, one's heart, and one's eye on the same axis. And you can read the rest yourself. Now, here comes the tricky one. I was asked about 3 weeks ago to be part of a television thing called My Greatest Shot. I have no idea what my greatest shot is. I don't think I've done my greatest shot. I want to produce an image that transforms geographic reality into transcendent emotional experience, like it was said of Ansel Adams. Whatever one may think of him, we are trying to produce a photograph, aren't we, that will convey what we felt when we were there, in that setting, in that light, with that weather, having that big emotional experience. We need to produce a photograph that will convey all our emotional feelings here, in our head, our heart, and our eye. And so that when we show our image in print form, not on a monitor, but in print form, they get it. They get what we felt. And I think that's absolutely pivotal to be able to do that. So, my greatest photograph? I haven't done one. I'm going to go through these quite quickly. I'm having a go. We're all having a go. There's loads of wonderful photographers in the United Kingdom. There are so many of us really enjoying photographing our wonderful country. In 2007, I started something called Landscape Photographer of the Year. It's now into its 14th year, and it produces a beautiful book. So we're completely engaged with the beauty and wonder and amazement of our own country. And we all know that when we photograph, be it in the UK or elsewhere, we know that we're trying to produce a photograph that will have parity with our emotional response. We're not just photographing something because it's beautiful. We know, don't we, that you could have a £20,000 phase, Hasselblad, Canon, whatever it is. You could see something beautiful and you could say, well, I'll just point my camera at it. It's bound to be good. And we even ourselves used to say, I hope that comes out. You remember that funny little expression? Snap. Hope that comes out. What did that mean? Hope it's technically correct? No, it's actually much more than that. It's when we said we hope it comes out, we hope it conveys what we felt and what we saw emotionally. That's the criteria for a good photograph, what it feels like. So we can just look at photographs and say, is that my best? No, it's not. I haven't done my best shot. I never will do my best shot. And I've absolutely no idea what my best photograph is. It's the pursuit that we love, that we want to get out into the natural world. And we want to produce images that will, as I keep saying, time and time again, match how we felt. What is it that stops us saying we love that? What is it that used to say when I used to look at transparencies when they came back from the laboratories, 6x6 they were, and I put them on the light box and I had to be alone, and down they went when they came back from the lab, E6 processing. My heart slumped. It wasn't there. It was soulless and it was sterile. It wasn't there, but it was beautiful. But the light was great, but it wasn't there. Landscape photography is unbelievably difficult. It's unbelievably difficult. And I think a lot of people will know this. And if it were easy, what did Kennedy say about the moon? We're not going to the moon because it's easy. It's because it's hard. And those people who write off landscape photography with the 4 killer words, decorative, illustrative, representational, and literal. Those are the 4 words that say it's not really an artistic endeavor, really. It's not really an artistic pursuit. I mean, it's photography. Photography is easy. You've got 36 goes. You remember? 36 goes, trial and error, hit and miss. We all know, all of you standing here, we all know that it's nothing to do with hit and miss. It's nothing to do with trial and error. It's a little bit of bracketing maybe to try and get the right exposure. But what we're wrestling with privately is to try and produce a photograph that we're proud of and that says to the viewer, yes, that's what it was. It was amazing. So we're honoring that landscape. We're honoring it with our heart and our soul. So is this one of my best? I've no idea. I like it, but I love it. Is this one of my best? I've absolutely no idea. I like it very much. And sometimes we all know that we can fall in and out of love with an image. We don't always know when other people maybe, they'll come up and say, oh, Charlie, that's amazing. Or oh, Mike, or oh, Steve, or to all of our friends here, very distinguished photographers. When a viewer says, oh, that's amazing, you don't like it anymore. You don't like it anymore. You are the judge. You are the criteria to measure the effectiveness of a photograph. I'm not going to tell you where they are because these are about 30 or 40 of images that I do like. It'd be wrong to say I don't, but they're certainly not my best, because I'll never do my best. We all know, to repeat, it's about having a go. It's about trying, and it's about doing the best you can. And that's where our pleasure comes from. And you look at this and you probably say, hey, it could never be that blue. How come trees are that blue? But they were. It was an extraordinary moment near where I live, and it was a most wonderful, wonderful experience. And I thought, no one's going to believe that. And interestingly, the foreground was sharp, and then in the middle was just a little bit of soft because a rogue wind came through, but then right at the back it's sharp again. So it was not a particularly long shutter speed, but it was a lovely, lovely experience. And I came back, and we all know this, I felt so elated. And that's what landscape photography does with us. We are engaging with the natural world. And the last 2 years, we have been deprived of it. And now we're suddenly, as if to say, it was there all the time. It was there all the time. This amazing natural world. I've started photographing centipedes and rescuing slugs. And somebody the other day said, oh, slugs, they kill my plants. Get rid of them. And I said, but it's a masterpiece. We just need to look and engage more with nature. And what does landscape photography do? The camera is the conduit through which we engage with the wild natural world. And that is where we get our absolutely fundamental joy from. And when we come away from trying to do a photograph, even if we may not make it, we come away feeling unbelievably elated. And I remember I've come back in the past and people have said, how'd you get on? Did you get on okay? No, didn't do anything. But you've been gone 6 hours. The weather was lovely. Yep, just didn't do anything. But I feel marvelous. And that's what we get from our landscape photography. So long live landscape. There'll be times where you'll see something and you'll think, oh, that's gorgeous. But we all know there's something that accompanies an artistic endeavor, and it's entirely appropriate that it should. It's about lack of confidence. How many times have you come back having done a photograph and beat your breast and said, I've done an amazing photograph. I'm absolutely thrilled with it. It's incredible. In a quiet little whisper, we might say, I'm hopeful. Maybe. I hope so. And when the time comes to make your print, that's the time to gauge. That's the time to judge. If you really feel very confident, I beg you to make a print, because it's only then that you can actually make a full engagement with your image and not look at it. You can see that this is quite glamorous. It was more subdued in the color. There are times when you feel especially proud, but still, there are lots of little errors here. There's a cow with 5 legs. I mean, for heaven's sake. But it was a lovely moment, and a moment that I'll never forget. And it's quite a popular photograph. And I'm really pleased about that. But it's not my greatest shot. I haven't done it, and nor have any of us, I don't think. The Lonely Tree, again, really enjoyable experience, demonstrating the tree can be noble and stately and magnificent and venerable, and words like that. A tree that might be, maybe that one might be, I don't know, 100 years old. But I learnt the other day that an oak tree can be anything up to 800 or even 1,000 years old. More lonely trees in Jordan. Really enjoyable process. Suddenly seeing this darling little tree and experiencing it alone. Blossom, who can resist blossom? Tuscany, can't believe that we don't love the clump of trees. We all love little isolated subjects, and a dark sky, a bit threatening, but I enjoyed it. A 6x17 transparency in Lake Titicaca a few years ago, 6x17. And when the very first print I made was of this. And I had somebody to help me. I found printing difficult. I still have got quite a lot to learn, but oh my word, when you press print and you go and see that, in my case, big printer sweeping across, finally it begins to appear, and then suddenly 1.5 meter print appears in my hands, and I think, oh my gosh, how am I going to lift it? Didn't plan that. Well, how am I going to get it onto the table? So there's a moment where you're suddenly in a state of absolute panic because you've got an enormous print, 70, 80 centimeters high by nearly 2 meters wide, long. But when it gets down onto the big table and you look at it, you think, how could that be? I thought that was only possible in the darkroom. And so I'm not saying you have to do giant prints, but something that at least lets you engage with it. Namibia, big panoramics. You don't have to do big panoramics. They could be quite small panoramics. But the main issue is to make sure that they're faithful to your, or have parity with your objective. And I think that's really important. But not my greatest photograph. I'm going to keep repeating that because they're absolutely not my greatest photograph. I will never do it. And I've repeated that 5 or 6 times already this afternoon. I will never do it. The pursuit. We have to keep trying. I remember thinking this was one of my favorites, and I thought I rather like the furrows in the soil, and I like the sky, and I like the furrows in the mountain, and even the roof of the little shed. And I thought that's a nice union between 4 elements. And I do think in a landscape photograph, relationships really matter. A bit like interior design. You walk in, you say, oh, isn't that lovely? What a lovely room. But actually the person who created it has spent a lot of time planning, orchestrating, organizing the different elements so that they hook up together quite well. That was in Mont Saint-Victoire in Provence. Waiting for clouds. Still not my greatest shot. Don't like the word shot really, but still. I think it kind of helps. It slightly demeans photography. So I think we should try and go back to photograph. It's such a lovely word. And I often think that the clouds that are not in your photograph are more useful than the ones that are. And those clouds were above me for quite a while. And then eventually they went back, and they subdued the back view, which was really good, the distant view. So that was full of miscellaneous stuff, barns and houses and cars and trucks, but you can't see them. And then suddenly a stab of light presented the amphitheater in exactly the way I wanted. And that was really, really thrilling for me. Very, very exciting indeed. Same here. I often think when I look at this, I wished I'd used a graduated filter upside down because I don't like the foreground. The eye, I don't want the eye to reside there. I would rather the eye were more involved, if you like, with the middle distance. But poor old Swindon is in the background, so I'm sorry, Swindon. The lonely tree. Usually the main issue about landscape photography is being arrested to begin with. And it's usually the head turns. You're in the car, you're walking, the head turns. And once it turns, ask yourself why. And ask yourself, what is it that asked me to turn my head? What are the bits that I liked? And then start thinking about the bits that you didn't. Omit the redundant is a very nice little term. Omit the redundant. You didn't see that. So try and refine, in my case, until you've produced an image that has parity with what you felt. This was in Tuscany. Architecture. I got rather new to architecture. I've probably been doing it a little bit. I worked for the National Trust a lot, as did my chum Joe Cornish and others. And that gave us a good grounding, if you like. But I was pleased with this little shape, the arcs and the relationships in Morocco. And then Gibraltar. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how I could produce a foreground which conveyed the word jagged, because Gibraltar was jagged. It wasn't beautiful. It was quite an aggressive, sort of hard shape, triangular shape. And I've been there 5 or 6 times. I have to say I've only been actually on the rock once. And then finally, I was about to give up, as we often do, don't we? We think, oh no, nothing's going to happen. We get in our car and, oh no, the thing I've been waiting for 4 hours suddenly has happened. It's that stab of light on wherever it was. So I suddenly thought, I'm going to have one more look at Gibraltar. And I turned round and the light came and it suddenly lit up this diabolical yellow-orange wall. I mean, can you imagine what a kind of ridiculous colour? And yet it was absolutely right. And then, of course, I suddenly thought it needs a reference point. We need to know how big it is. And then in comes a man, thank you very much. Enter man, stage right. And with a bag, little yellow bag, funnily enough. And all of a sudden, it came to life, which is really pleasing. Years ago, I did a photograph of Bales, and there were no clouds in the sky at all, absolutely none. But way over on my right was this collection of clouds, and I thought, they'll never arrive and maintain their shape. They never will, not like this. And bit by bit, they did. And they delivered themselves precisely above those bales. But, regrettably, I didn't have my ladder. So the top of the bale, I can't use this pointer, the top of the big bale on the left was protruding into the belly of the big cloud. Oh my gosh, panic. The clouds were moving fast. Panic, panic. Ran back like a rocket to my car, got the ladder, came back, climbed up the ladder, and just managed to make sure that the top of that bale was underneath it was separated from the bottom of the cloud. So we know that landscape photography can be thrilling, tantalizing and thrilling. Shapes, designs, color in the Palouse area in Washington State, really, really tantalizing. And another one. And when it comes to printing, it's worth saying that I rather like to use a magnifying glass. It's a loop, an 8 times loop. And when I printed on my Fotospeed paper, I look down at the loop and I like to see that the ink hasn't migrated anywhere. It lands and it stays where it's landed. And I really do enjoy that. There's no sort of bleed, especially on the sharp edges. And that blue there, which is where the sun hadn't managed to burn off, I cared a lot that blue was evident, and the cold grass too was also there. There's 3 now of the same place, and I'm absolutely addicted to this particular location near me in Dorset. And that was one, and that was another. And I just adore the rectangular shapes. They really, really are hugely enjoyable. And another. So all at different times of the year, an enormous amount of pleasure, juxtaposing. So when we look at a photograph that's about to be produced, don't be preoccupied with the middle bit. It's like when we look at one another and meet one another's eyes, we tend not to say, oh, I just want to look at your shoulder, sorry. And what shoes you're wearing. Oh, and the trousers, yes. Oh, you've got a belt on. Does that match the clothes you've got on? No. Oh, belt's getting a bit loose as well. And just scan the entire image that you're going to make ultimately. Because, oh my golly, you cannot see that result later, post-exposure, and say you didn't notice something. That is major smack wrists. I'm sorry, it is. And I often don't notice something. So Mr. Smarty Pants Waite doesn't always notice everything. I've got another little phrase, if you can bear it. It's attend and intend. Attend to everything and let everything attended to either be intended, not intended, or accepted to be there. And that is one of the great pleasures of landscape photography. And there's another one, the same. And here's one that was about a week ago. And it looks pretty vivid there, and it isn't so vivid, but nevertheless, the pleasure of working with these geometric shapes was absolutely immense. And another one, when the Met person says it's changeable, go out. When they say it's changeable, it means they have absolutely no idea whatsoever what's going to happen. And go out in the rain. This one, it was raining for 2.5 hours, from 5 o'clock, 4:30 to just after 7. And once that rain had passed, the light is razor sharp and it lasts 5 to 10 minutes. And I promise you, after that, all the molecules, the dust molecules in the sky come up and it becomes normal and the light gets diffused. But for about 5 to 10 minutes, the razor sharp light is thrilling. In fact, I remember shouting out, oh my gosh. It was just astonishing. And then in a very short time, it had gone. And exactly the same there. And that sky it does look darker here compared to what it actually was. But that sky was full of rain. And it passed and zap, out came the sun. So when it's changeable, say to your beloved, I'm just off out, darling. I have no idea when I'll be back. But hopefully by nightfall. Still not we're not showing any of my greatest images. I haven't done them yet. I'm repeating it. I haven't done them, and I never will. I'm just having a go. I keep repeating that. How about this? Suddenly, I'm in a place where there's oilseed rape and flax. Flax is a June crop. Oilseed rape, unbelievably, is more April, early May, late April. Said to the farmer, I didn't expect to see this, and I never forget him saying, "No, I'm the laughing stock of the Wiltshire farming community because the oilseed rape's come up too late, and it's come up next to the flax, and I planted it at the wrong time." So I was very grateful to him. Sometimes there's going to be an image that you think, my gosh, this really is everything I wanted it to be. And when you see the finished result, and we used the words earlier, soulless and sterile, and those are two rotten, nasty words to apply to a landscape. But I have to apply them to some of mine because sometimes they have not lived up to my expectations. And I never know why, and I'm very despondent. And it wasn't due to lack of confidence. I had confidence, but there are things about this photograph that I wished had been slightly different. There are times when you have very little confidence, but there's a little sort of word, a little phrase that suddenly says, "Go on, Charlie, do it. Go on, have a go. You're smelling success." And I thought, it's too subdued. There's not enough light. And suddenly there was a bit of diffused light on this church in Montepulciano, and all of a sudden, and it was there. Still not my greatest photograph. Venice. Did a book on Venice. The hardest place I've ever photographed in my life. Now, I can hear you say, what? But it's the most photogenic. Is it? 410 bridges. I tell you, it's incredibly difficult. It's full of people who aren't Venetians. You know, usually there's about 250,000, 500,000 people in Venice, and it's incredibly difficult. So it's about reduction, and simplicity. And this, thankfully, just about made it for me. It's black and white, and I put a little bit of. I remember making a mistake and taking the print out of the stop bath before it went into the fixer, and I had the light on, and suddenly this sort of pinky color showed up, which was rather pleasing. Architecture, still with architecture, having a go, loving the twists, loving the relationships. In Libya, which we're going to talk about in a minute, exactly the same thing. And I thought, there's something wrong. What the hell is it? So I went to that door, the green door, and opened it. Luckily, it was open. And suddenly, the thing that was wrong, which was a huge blank wall on the right, suddenly became right. And the door did the trick. And the door's shadow hooked up to the lower shadow, and I had a zigzag. And all of a sudden, that zigzag matched the top half of the slope of that little cone shape on the top. And suddenly we had integration, just like an interior design, just like somebody who's cooking a really good meal. They're not just going to say, "There you are, I hope you like it." They'll have got the beans al dente. They've got the potatoes exactly right. They'd have got everything right. They'd have put it on the table exactly right. Then everybody hopefully will say, "That's delicious." And the cook will say, "I'm so glad you like it." But it would have taken a lot of prep, a lot of planning, and even the pudding had to be right. The way the knife and fork were set, they just don't bung it down. So landscape photography is incredibly difficult. And I'm really glad that it is, because we don't want something to be easy. We want it to be hard for stretching ourselves. An extraordinary place, once Burma, just waiting for her. Please, could you move a little bit to the right? And she did, but too much. Please, could you move back to the left? I didn't ask her. I was just saying it out loud to myself. And finally, she did, and she delivered herself between these 2 points. And all of a sudden, I had elbows and triangles absolutely everywhere. Her elbow, the triangle of the brush, her other elbow, another triangle. And so those triangles that she was making hooked up very nicely to her reflection, which is multiple triangles, and then the triangles by the boats. We're moving on a bit. Take a camera with you everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. There will come a time, it may not have been yet, but where you see a photograph that you just think, "Oh, that's amazing. Oh, thank goodness. Thank goodness. I've got my iPhone." Really? Okay, do it on your iPhone. Then meet the owner of the restaurant who says, oh, that's amazing. Do you know what? That would work brilliantly as a 15-foot by 6-foot image in my restaurant. Brilliant. I'll buy that. 10,000? I did it on my phone. Oh, right. So if we're photographers, don't get that satisfactory hit by using your phone and think, oh, I've done it. I've done the picture. I've done it. I've nailed it. I did it on my phone. And anyway, I'm not going to make it very big. But just supposing you do decide to do that exhibition with a charity, which I urge you to pursue, they will be thrilled. They will be thrilled. They might make a couple of £1,000 from your charitable act. And also the printers might do a lovely catalogue for you. You might even get the gallery free. You might find that a restaurant might be happy to exhibit your images. So print, if you don't print, you can't do any exhibition ever. Not really, unless you want a frame with a DVD, CD, or a little memory stick in the middle of the frame. So Cadiz, suddenly, I was so pleased I had my camera. I nearly didn't take it. So this image might never have happened. The bird, its mate with a little bit of light on its chest, the posts, the boat-like building. I was so thankful. I better watch. I've been on an adventure, and the adventure has been unusual places. And I remember thinking about this. I've no idea. I've absolutely no idea. But I feel hugely attracted to it. And I feel hugely attracted to that, which was in Andalusia, in southern Spain. I mean, it's extraordinary, but I can't not do it. And I have my very old Hasselblad with a digital back, which I'm absolutely loving. So I knew I could make a huge print if I needed to. And then I looked at this and I thought, this is not really me. But I felt an immense, whatever me is, I felt an immense attraction to do it. And I was really so pleased. And I was a bit worried about the one on the right, the green, because I thought, I can't find that green anywhere. I can find all the other blues, but I can't find that green. And on the computer, it is possible to hook up, because this is so a glamorous display, offering things a bit more colourful. But I'd rather that than the other way, I suppose. But I did feel that the green worked. They were garages. Oh, I must remove that for sale sign with a number. Oh no, I don't think I should. I don't really want to remove it. I saw it on the day. And you can often over-cleanse something with Photoshop. You can often over-engineer a photograph until it's cleansed there, remove that, until not the life sucked out of it, but it is possible to produce something that sometimes could actually have depended on a little bit of a hint of something that could actually give it a greater pleasure for the viewer. And the three together. Someone very sweetly acquired all three together, and they look quite good, but I still am slightly lacking in confidence in them. I'm more than happy to reveal that. With printing, do look out for textures. The viewer will find great satisfaction from textures. They really will. Oh, I can touch that. I can almost scrape my fingers on that wall. It isn't just shapes. It isn't just geometry. It's not just design, pattern, mood, atmosphere, and emotion. It can also be texture. And it's a very enjoyable thing to be able to convey texture with your print. Exactly the same. Simple. Where do I put the tree? I'm okay with a boat. I'm up high. I can see inside the boat. But where do I put the tree? And then finally, I thought, oh, that's fine. Have the tree and its accompanying shadow just meeting and accompanying the stern of the boat. That's all right. And finally, it was. Going a bit quicker, Weymouth, blue and yellow, cold and warm are a very good relationship. So, contrasting colors, nothing over on the right, nothing. There must be something. I need a shadow. I need a little event. I need something to take place on that right-hand side. Ah, two seagulls. Suddenly. Thank you so much. And there they were. It gave me an enormous pleasure to see that. Little cameos. Look out for little cameos. Even if you're a landscape photographer, keep your eyes open. Be visually agile. It's quite a good word, that phrase, visually agile. Keep alert, 360 degrees. Just because you're a landscape photographer, it doesn't mean necessarily that you can't do anything else. Look out for something that could look black and white. It actually was this color, but it isn't black and white. Look out for relationships and various things that give you visual pleasure. This was in Libya, which we're going to talk about in a minute. It was a rather interesting journey, which I'll mention in a second. But missed in a mausoleum in Tripoli, and quite a lovely experience. I couldn't tell where it began or where it ended. It was a really nice feeling. Look for comedy. You know, I had a little camera with me, and it was quite fun. And on a bad weather day, decide to maybe produce a photograph that you might give away to a friend, a member of the family, who might like dogs or who might like chickens. And just say, I photographed your dog the other day. I'd really like to give you a print. They will never have done it. They will probably have seen a print 5x4. They will never have seen hardly ever an A3 of their doggy, if ever. You can get immense pleasure from giving a print of an image to somebody, and they will always recall you, and they will always be grateful. So do think of photographing your pets, because you're working with light, you're working with shape, you're working with design, you're working with mood, with something that's poignant. You know, his eyes looking right into me. His name was Tank. Very sadly, said goodbye to him about a month ago. But I adore him, and he was a great sitter. I could see him now saying, "Oh, for heaven's sake, not again." Keep your eyes open. Always have that camera with you. Kodak recording film, 6,000 ASA, American Standards Association. We don't use that word anymore. 6,000 used for police surveillance. And I thought, well, why not? I'm on a place called near Bray Hill on the Camel Estuary in North Cornwall, looking across to Padstow. And my dog's sitting there, and those funny sticks, I'll have a go. And very grainy, what we now call noise, or artifacts, don't we? I think it worked rather well. 6,400, I think it was, something like that. And my last one of a dog. So do keep yourself photographically, visually agile. I'm repeating myself, but it really matters. Keep your hand in. It would be pretty bad if somebody asked you, when did you last do a photograph, and you said 2 weeks ago. That's not brilliant, because it's easy to just say, oh, I must do some photography. Oh gosh, it's the last episode of such and such. I'll do some tomorrow. Go out. You will definitely be rewarded, and often not by a photograph. It's a really good thing to remember. I think this used to be my favorite, partly because the weather had been awful for 4 or 5 days. It's in the Jura in France. And all of a sudden, this happened. And it was quite biblical. I know that word is used a lot, but it was truly biblical. I emerged from that experience having pretty much abandoned my book I was working on called Landscape in France. I'd been there 5 days, rain. And I said, right, to hell with it. I'm off to Le Havre. This is just not working. In fact, I even remember thinking, I think I might give up landscape photography. I do. And luckily, suddenly, this happened, as if to say, oh no, Charlie, you've got a lot more to do, buddy. And so I stayed, and I never went to Le Havre. Libya. I don't want to sound heroic, because it wasn't heroic. But a very mysterious thing happened in the latter half of 2010. I had a telephone call from somebody. I had no idea who they were, and they said, we'd like to commission you to go to Libya and do a project on the landscape of Libya. You will be received by the Libyan government, and we will be publishing the book. And we will pay you such and such in advance for expenses. And more than that, we're not able to say. Oh, could you tell me who's commissioned it? I'm afraid we're not authorized to do that. Will my fare be paid? Yes, it will. And we'd like you to leave on a very specific date, January 2011, January the 7th. And when can I come back anyway? Anytime? No, you have to come back on February the 16th, 2 days before my birthday. Any reason for this strict arrival time and departure time? Yes, because that's the time allocated for you to do the photography. And you will have the opportunity to have guards looking after you. Will it be anything to do with him? And by the way, when I got there, this was 7-8 feet high throughout Tripoli, throughout Benghazi, everywhere in Libya. There were images of him. I probably saw up to 200, and some of them were 30 feet high. It was quite extraordinary. I was rather pleased with that, but sad about the 2 camels at the back. I wish they'd been in a line. They're my guards. They were all lovely. They look a bit sinister now, but they really were absolutely lovely. And once or twice we got stuck, and I got quite nervous. In fact, I really got very nervous, and I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen. But amazingly, it all worked out fairly well, and I got involved with some Tuareg tribesmen dancing. I danced with them. I didn't dance that well, but I did have a dance with them, which was rather fun. I enjoyed it a lot. Whether this remains or not, I don't know. One of the terrible tragedies about African, or for that matter, and we now know Afghanistan, great treasures, is that they're not respected by the victors. And revolution doesn't really take into account great treasures. I don't know whether this is still here. I pray it is, but it will be a great tragedy if it isn't. And we all know we have lost the most wonderful architectural splendors as a consequence of revolutions, trouble and strife between different ideologies, tragically in years to come, that will probably be forgotten. And sadly, there'll be no evidence of any of these great treasures. But I loved and felt so privileged to be in Libya, which was the most wonderful country, and an extraordinary sky on this day. Could not believe such a lovely sky. And I know there's all sorts of things now, people working with the ICM. Beautiful. I've seen some wonderful ICM images. And somebody said, Charlie, is that an ICM? And I said, no, it was natural. And I'm not saying that because it was natural, it's more valid. It absolutely not. It just was rather nice that it was natural. Little cameos, and I was there for quite a long time, as I say. And just before it came to an end, I had one of my guides, and I said to him, will you be leading another photographer after the 16th of February when I fly back? And he said, no, I have to be back urgently to Benghazi. And I never thought for a moment that that meant something, because Benghazi, as we know, on the 17th of February 2011 was where the revolution took place. And a few months later, Gaddafi was killed. We've seen that one. This may not mean much, but this is a documentary photograph. It was water. Water was supplied to every person in Libya. They had very, very sophisticated techniques and amazing computer arrangements. And you wouldn't think that this was all going on in Libya. So my experience of Libya was extraordinary. I flew back on the 16th of February, and on the 17th, it all kicked off. I'd like to say that I was heroic and ran across rooftops, missing machine gun fire, but I just got a perfectly ordinary British Airways flight, and I didn't know what was going to be happening the next day. But I hope it settles down. It would be lovely if it did. So I've put this up, and I've never done it before, but it's quite a leveling thing. I was once asked what my favorite landscape was, and that's what we've been talking about, really. What is our favorite landscape? I don't think any of you standing here today, I'd like to think, would not be able to say you have an absolute favorite. I think you'll say that you like a lot of the ones you've done, but I don't think you'll have an absolute favorite, because if you have, it means the others weren't quite right. And my favorite landscape is that. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. we're going to do a few questions and answers.
Yes.
I don't need to talk about that. It's obvious.
Thank you very much, Charlie. That was fascinating. And as a landscape photographer myself, I really kind of resonated with a lot of things you said. So thank you very much. Right. Who has a question? Come on, someone must have a question.
Otherwise, I'm going to feel redundant.
Yes. So just to repeat the question was, how do you decide which images you're going to print?
Well, interestingly, I could just mention one thing that's quite important. With Landscape Photographer of the Year, I'm very flattered to be always one of the judges. And when I find one that I think really is the one, that I think is just completely marvelous and I'm moved by it, I like to print it out, because I don't really want to judge it on the monitor. I just don't feel, it could be that I've got a background of printing and I just know the joy and the immense pleasure I get from holding a print in my hand, and I can just fully engage with it more. It's that simple. So when the decision comes to print, I've still got a lot to learn about printing. I know that I've landed on my favorite paper, which I enjoy very much, and it gives me immense pleasure. As I say, I look at it through my loupe. I'll sometimes do maybe 2 or 3 prints of the same thing, and I'm not brilliant with Photoshop. I'm the first to say that. I'm not great in post, but I try and get it right in camera. That doesn't mean to say, oh, clever Charlie gets it right in camera. I'm not. People are much better than me in Photoshop. And I think it needs a bit of restraint, if I dare say, and integrity using image manipulating software. But still, when I look at the print, I have to look at it under a daylight balanced illumination, which I think is really important. Always take it outside, never in bright sunshine, and just look at it, put it on a flat surface and live with it for 3 to 5 minutes. And just really just say, right, has it reached the expectations that I wanted this image to reach? And if it hasn't, go back and do it again. And maybe, if need be, ask for help. But I think I probably print all the images I might have in an exhibition. I will have printed myself, and with a degree of difficulty and frustration. But that's the way it is, and I don't think I'm alone. And that's exactly how it should be, because it means you're trying to produce an image that is, to you, perfect, and that echoes ultimately what you felt. I go on and on about that. I'm sorry, but you don't want to just see a representation of of the image you made. You want to see a photograph that actually has parity with what you felt in your head, your heart, and your eye. And I hope that answers the question. A long answer, sorry.
So just a quick follow-up question. So you mentioned you've got a favourite paper. Which one is it, and how did you get to that stage where you decided that you had a favourite paper?
I tried with you guys. I think, about 10 different ones. I quite liked the texture. I like the fact that I was able to prove that because it was textured, the ink stayed there. And I do recommend looking at your paper through a loupe, because it's lovely to see the way an ink, especially on a highlight and a shadow edge, and you look with your loupe down there, and it's really good. It gives you an immense feeling of confidence. I think one of the things about printing, apart from the necessity to do it, because you are shortchanging yourself if you don't, and you can retrieve everything, as I say, by having a relationship with a charity. But I think the really important thing is to expect for it to not be easy. No creative endeavor is going to be easy. It's not fraught with difficulties, but it should have hurdles that you overcome. And it's a learning process. And once you embark on it, I promise you, once you've made that exchange between the image that you have printed and that you made in the field, that you did with your camera, you made the exposure, and you come all the way around to not send off by WeTransfer something an image that somebody else will print, which is not a crime. It's absolutely fine. Does it come back precisely as you want? I'll leave that hanging in the air, because if you print, you get back an image that you wanted to print and get the level of printing that you wanted.
Yeah, I don't think you can beat that excitement of watching your print come out, like you said, when you're printing out that panoramic image. Ooh,
Yes.
I think my microphone's been turned up. Watching that image come out, it's a really exciting part of the process, isn't it? Watching that
Yes.
image come to life. Has anyone got any more questions?
It really is.
Sticking to this paper theme, do you choose different types of paper depending on the image?
No.
So
Oh.
just so everyone else can hear,
Sure.
do you choose different types of paper for different images?
No, I don't. I use the same one because mostly all my photographs, with the exception of black and white, but I don't print that much black and white, I am so familiar with the characteristics and the personality of the paper after 5 or 6 years, I think, that I don't want to stray off and use another saucepan, or I know the paper so well. I didn't to begin with, but now I would like to never really change, and they carry all my landscapes really, really well. Really does.
Anyone? Yes.
Can't remember your name. Julian. Oh, I'm sorry, pal.
All the best people are called Julian.
Because sorry, Julian. Good question.
Yeah, so the question, Charlie, was over the last 18 months, how have you coped or managed not being able to go out and do the thing that you love?
That's an incredibly good question. It's actually been heartbreaking, really, but I have managed to do a bit. But I haven't really managed to travel very much, except in recent weeks. I think what it has helped me with, and I hope other people have done this, is to refer back to the images you did. And we all know, don't we, that we have, how can I put this, external hard drives, of which sales have rocketed by 300%, external hard drives. Samsung hard drives, all of them. And they rocketed because people have dumped their unedited photographs onto their external hard drives and haven't sorted them. And I must do that. Yeah, I must. That lovely one I did of the swan or whatever. I must sort that. So it's given me quite a good time to be able to rediscover, because my filing system is not quite as good as I would wish it. Regrettably, unfortunately, I wish it were, but it hasn't been. So I think it's given me an enormous amount of time to be able to do that, and also reflect on our motivation behind the photography that we're doing. And I am passionate, and really have been before I met the lovely Fotospeed. I'm passionate about sharing our photography, but not always through Instagram and Facebook. If you want any help about having an exhibition, I probably will write a little piece about it, because I think it's what we must do. And
Right,
I'm
just
sure
a
you will.
quick follow up then. So, Landscape Photographer of the Year, has the impact of the COVID and the lockdown, have you noticed a difference in the photographs that have been submitted to that competition?
Yes, that's a very good question. A lot of the internal images, a lot of images have been interiors, but interiors that are allowed. Quite a lot of them have been slightly darker, and that's why when I make a point of printing a photograph that I think has very strong hopes to become the outright winner, I really do enjoy that process, and I look at it carefully, hugely carefully, and I can't gauge its merits on a monitor. I just can't. But when it comes to the variation, I think there's definitely, what there is more. There are more people photographing, surprisingly, because they've dug back into their archives. So, but it's a very exciting time, and there are an enormous number of people who are absolutely loving the landscape photography process, more and more and more. So I'm hoping Landscape Photographer of the Year will once again go into its 15th year, It's pretty exciting. So all being well, it will.
Any other questions?
Sorry?
Out of all the winners, is there any that you would say is a favourite?
So I think, yeah, Grant's asked Charlie quite a tricky question, actually. So of all the winners of the landscape photographer, do you have a personal favourite?
Might do.
Very diplomatic.
No, I will say that I voted for them all very favourably, and I have this big trouble with the personal favourites because it does mean that it's better than the others. I think that there are probably, I don't know, 200 or 300 photographs that I've seen that I like enormously in Landscape Photographer of the Year, and I envy that photographer being in that setting, in that experience. Not, oh, I wished I'd done that photograph. I wished I'd been there. I'd be quite happy watching you doing it. I just wanted to be there. So I find it a most uplifting competition. I really do.
I think it's hard to choose your own favourite. I don't think there's anything wrong with actually looking at a photograph and saying, that is just,
Yeah, yeah,
there's something about it.
yeah. It doesn't exclude the others.
It's like, my favourite is Mark Literature because it's not a standard landscape.
Yes.
It's a bit different.
Yeah.
But still love the others.
But it's a, as long as we carry on doing our photography, that's really what matters, and getting it out there.
Anyone else got a question? Yes. I don't think you actually named the paper, your favourite paper, Charlie. What is it?
What is it? You tell me.
I can't remember.
I'm going to ask people if they can guess.
Does anyone know what it is? Who's...
I'm going to get a box of it because it's a good thing.
Excellent.
Is there a box there? Abby?
I don't know.
Toby.
Toby.
I've got a box of my paper. I want it to go into people's heads.
So just, sorry, Charlie, I'll ask you a question about the paper. You helped,
Very much.
you were involved in the process of the creation of this paper, weren't you?
Yes, I went into it in depth. I took advice from Fotospeed, and we arrived at platinum etching 285. And I just, it's like my bedfellow. I truly love it, and it's because I've got to know it so well. And I think if you are going to work with a paper, then I beg you to get to know it, and don't immediately say, "Oh, this is difficult." If you have a little hint or a little clue that this image, this paper, is going to suit you, then pursue it, persevere.